Hi, everybody. Welcome to my channel. I have a very, very special guest today. I am honored to have Max Lowen on. She is a survivor of satanic ritual abuse, traffic and trafficking. She's grown up in various places all around the world. You said to me, Spain, Italy, the Dominican Republic, the USA, and a lot more countries. You're a therapist. You do a lot of healing work with survivors, with people that experience abuse. You're a truth speaker, also a freedom activist. You have the Unbroken podcast on Rumble, which I really like. It's a great podcast, so check that out, people. You also have your site unbroken.global, where you offer services. We'll go into that at the end of the interview. I'm gonna share the site with the people. You're I have to say, the interviews you've watched, you're very knowledgeable about healing and trauma. I'm really impressed. I consider you like an expert on trauma and on healing. Also, of course, because you did your own healing, you did the work, which I think is really the most important thing. And I think, when we're talking about SRA, the most important aspect of it is the story about healing and about the strength of the human spirit. Because when I watched your interviews, I truly was in awe with, what you have gone through, and still you managed to heal yourself. And you call it unbroken, which is just like I said, a testament to the strength of the human soul, actually. So we're gonna definitely talk on that. So before we start, so I'm gonna ask, so how are you, Max? And maybe you can launch off into a little sharing. Starting off, sharing about yourself. What you experienced. So welcome, Max.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Jens. I'm always happy to meet people such as yourself. We're out there spreading the truth, and truth has a certain frequency. It's light, and this, we live under a global satanic cult. It's just structured into everything in society. And they have succeeded with secrecy and deception. So actually putting out the truth for people is a hugely important piece of how we're going to change our reality. I think the other significant piece is healing from our traumas. And I went through an extreme version of trauma. But I think to be born on this planet is to experience trauma in some form. I would say it's a continuum, So I think that combination of healing yourself and freeing yourself internally, and then understanding how the world works so you don't consent to things that are damaging to yourself and to humanity, is a winning formula.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And I really resonate with what you're saying. Like, everybody is traumatized in some way. I mean, not that I want to talk trauma onto people and make them believe they have trauma, but it's true, I mean, you experienced the extreme version of that, but we all have healing to do. And I think that's vitally important in these times, is to really, do our spiritual work. Because if we don't, we kind of slip into that subconscious area where we just live life and we're not living consciously. So yeah, so I really resonate with that.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, the whole of society, of humanity, and this is deliberately done, are put through, you can call them global traumas, wars. The same people that run the whole planet, they fund both sides of wars, they create them on purpose. It generates a lot of low frequency energy and trauma in the population. Controlling the food supply and the water and energy and transportation, and then making these things very difficult or expensive, the economy, scarcity, poverty, these are all unnatural on a balanced planet. This is deliberately all engineered to be this way, to keep us at a level of stress, because see, they understand, they have occulted knowledge. It just means hidden knowledge. So they're very savvy in terms of the psychology of the human being, the brain, the nervous system. And the brain is designed ultimately, the number one thing is survival, right? So if you are stressed, or there's something that your brain perceives is dangerous, it doesn't have to actually be dangerous, right? It's just the perception. Then the prefrontal cortex, the part here, which is your thinking, your reasoning, your common sense, actually shuts down in favor of the brainstem and the limbic brain, because in a situation of real danger, if you were in front of a predator, to think takes too many seconds. It's too costly. So the brain shuts that down and defaults to an immediate reaction, right? And so fight or flight is activated in our system. All these chemicals go around. And as long as you are in fight or flight, you can't use your brain properly. So it is no accident that they keep us in fight or flight constantly. Everything in the media is fear, fear, fear. There's a boogeyman, whether it's a terrorist or a virus, or there's always something that people are told to be very afraid of. And then that, of course, leads into their favorite method called the Hegelian dialectic, right? Where they create the problem, and then they anticipate the fear and the reaction, but then they have at the ready the solution that they actually always wanted to impose. So this is mind control works with fear and repetition primarily. So you can see how everything is designed deliberately to keep human beings in a low survival state, because in this frequency, we can be controlled, okay? So that's back to my original point. You can't live in this world without experiencing some form of trauma. Even these global traumas, it makes life very, very stressful for all of us, right? And then you throw in the divide and conquer and the racial stuff and all of this. I mean, it's just a soup of constant, stressful events. And this is by design. The world doesn't have to be this way, okay? And with someone like myself and other survivors that I know, they've been perfecting this method on us individually for decades, for hundreds of years, MK Ultra and all these other things. But what they've done to us individually and in a very intense manner, they have learned from and they have delivered to the whole of society.
Yeah, it's absolutely, they have it down to a science, actually, a very perfected science, right? And it's a bad thing, actually, but they are very knowledgeable about it. And I want to share something, because 2 years ago I visited the Vatican. So I walked around, in the museum part of the Vatican, which is like inside the walls of the Vatican, and it felt, what I felt, reflecting to what you're saying. I felt like it was really weird to say, but I felt like I was outside of the matrix somehow. I felt like they had more knowledge, like they had more knowledge than the common man. Like I felt that it was a place where more knowledge was held. They knew more about reality than outside of the walls. Of course, they're trapped within their own matrix of like darkness and stuff. They have their own limitations. But I could really feel that was the thing that really surprised me, is that I felt it was a place where there was a lot more knowledge that was, yeah, that somehow their worldview seemed bigger than the worldview of the common man, or what the mainstream media pushes. Maybe, is that something that you've really also experienced? That so obviously with the mind control, maybe it's something you can speak on that, or?
Yeah, the Vatican does have a lot of books and other things underneath, miles and miles of stored scrolls and things. Some of it is stored in other places as well. And so, but yes, they definitely have this information, because see, the Vatican was designated to be sort of the control over human consciousness. So they're very well educated in this. The Jesuits are extremely well educated in how to manipulate human consciousness and how to, particularly through the abuse of a child, not only from birth on, but actually even before birth, to create a certain, this is how they create assassins or honeypots or super soldiers, or the satanic ritual abuse and MK Ultra, the sort of elite families or bloodline families all actually do this to some of their own children, also to groom them to a future role in some leadership position on the planet, right? So it's you can call it like a Manchurian candidate, so to speak. So the Vatican was the center for controlling human consciousness. So you might even say, they call it the Holy See, SEE, but it's really a control over the SEA, the sea of consciousness. So they're masters of this, and then, the Vatican is not part of Italy. It's its own independent country, for lack of a better word. The same goes for Washington, D.C. So the United States has been the military part of this control structure. And then same with the City of London. They have been a financial aspect of this control structure. And there are some other places, but so there's different factions of this global cult, I call it. You could call it global deep state or whatever you want. And different sections have different, knowledge and what they're supposed to be doing, right? So yes, the Vatican is definitely about the consciousness and the knowledge, the occulted knowledge that they use, unfortunately, against us.
Mm-hmm. Would you say the Vatican is built like on a power spot? Because I know, like through my own research, is like they build churches on power spots to like influence, like the morphic field of the earth, also through the rituals they do. Um, is that something because I've seen you, but I wasn't able to see it. I've seen you also speak on ley lines and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
maybe you can expand a bit on that.
yeah. So they have built all these structures on it's like the chakra system of the planet, who is herself a being just like us, right? So they have built these dark places on these energetic lines to use that power. They can take, in fact, they are of the dark, so they are cut off from the source, from the life force. It's kind of like if you say that we as humans are the sun, we have our own energy source, but they are like the moon. They can only use our light. So they will use our light, but they will use the light of the planet, so to speak, by building on these specific, ley lines, to harvest this really good energy, but they harvest it and they twist it. Satanism is about inversion, and then they twist it. And because the dark has to use the light as their fuel source. Okay. So, yes, all of these structures on Earth are built on these specific, important energetic sites. And, underneath the Vatican, there is a very extensive tunnel system. It goes to outside of Italy, even. It goes in many different directions. I did not see this, but I heard that it's actually structured as a pentagram, in the shape of it. So that's another thing. A lot of these tunnel systems and underground facilities of all kinds, they're everywhere on the planet, okay? But under the Vatican, there's a very well developed tunnel system. And where I would be taken is, people say, oh, the catacombs or the tomb. No, it's way, way more under the ground than that. And so I was taken there where they sacrifice children. And you can only get there through these tunnel systems. So, and it's, when you're down there, it's very, in these rituals where I would observe, they brutalize a child first to get the adrenaline and the fear and all that, the terror. And then they sacrifice the child. And this is to like open an energetic portal. and bring in dark energy, dark entities. So they worship Lucifer. I can tell you this for a fact, that is their god, okay? And so these things are done in homage to Lucifer. So it's a very, very dark system. And the Vatican, you know, it's always, they call it the black nobility. So it's not black like racial. It's black because it's the color of Lucifer. It's the dark. So the black nobility is also, there's a lot of families like the Orsini and the Medici and the Farnese and the Palavancini, etc., who are, you know, they're called black nobility. And like the Orsinis are usually have represented a lot of the popes, for example, throughout history. So yes, there's a whole system. So what it seems on the surface is this, and I mean, you have to say that the Vatican, the cathedral, I mean, it's beautiful. The artistry of it, you know, it's absolutely stunning. The architecture, all of it. So it poses as this benign, you know, Catholic church. And the people, many of the people, unless you're at the top levels, you're an innocent person. You know, if you're Catholic or if you're a regular priest or whatever, you think you're doing something good, you don't know, you know. So I'm not implicating people who, you know, have faith in their creator and go there and want to express that. They're innocent, you know, they don't know that this is evil. But see, when people are in a church, for example, and there's a church sermon going on and the people are singing and this energy, which is again energy of the light, is sucked in and used to power the dark things that they do all over the world. And this is the case everywhere. Stadiums, they're built in a certain circular pattern so that it's a vortex, you know, so when people get all excited in a football game or something, this energy is being used. This is the case in all of these situations. They need see, they're parasites. So they need us and our energy to do all their evil deeds. But see, this is the good news, Jens, because that means that once we're aware, we don't give them our energy anymore and we use it to create something good. See, they need us as a host because they're parasites, but we don't actually need them. And so all this stuff is a smokescreen, because think about it this way. How many resources, money, time, energy has been put into poisoning our food, spraying us from the airplanes, creating many diseases have patents they're created, you know, the frequencies that they pulse, the miseducation, the media, the mind control everywhere. Why so many resources to keep the human being's consciousness down here? Because we're actually powerful, extremely powerful. And they don't want that. They don't want us to know that. And they don't want us to achieve our full potential, because if we do, that's it for them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like, well, and I've spoke about this recently. Is like they have a fear. They may not admit it, but they're dependent on us. So they have a fear that if we wake up, it's game over for them, because we are actually we are their base in a way. Like they need, like you said, like they need our energy in so many ways, like the wars, the divide and rule, the rituals, and all that stuff. So if we wake up, we stop giving our energy away. It's basically, you know, it's basically they have like they're gonna be confronted then with their own fear of death, basically, because their sustenance is gonna be stopped. So I think they have this subconscious fear, which they probably will not admit. That's why they're so controlling, right? A person who is controlling has a fear, right? Has a very subconscious fear. If you want to control everything in your life, it's always based on fear, right? So they too have a fear.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they work very hard to keep us under complete control for a reason, you know?
Yeah.
And I think historically, anytime humanity has risen a little bit, there's always some backlash to bring us, you know, back down.
Mhm.
So yes, no, absolutely.
Yeah. to about the recent events. We've of course we had the terrorism a while back, and then we had the quote unquote health crisis, I will call it, 4 years ago.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
to me, it all seemed like a one big mind control operation. The masks, like wear your masks, like covering up your identity, your unique identity. Being like it's like a form of communism. How was it? Because you probably, as a survivor, you immediately spotted it, of course, what it was all about. How did you experience that time? How was that for you?
I knew it immediately, just like I knew it when I saw these alleged airplanes hitting the Twin Towers back many, decades ago. And I thought, oh no, what are they doing now? And I would call that health crisis a global satanic ritual. Okay. It's creating terrible fear. There never was a health crisis, number one. Okay, that was a lie from the get-go. But you see how good they are and how mind control works. The actual factual things that you could find at the agencies, that spread this, would say something very different than what the media was saying. So there they are saying something that isn't true, and the repetition. There's been some psychological studies that if 8 different sources say the same lie, it is accepted as truth, right? So the repetition of the lie, and then the staged, many people now know that these health crises and these, that there were staged places where the medical staff were supposedly overwhelmed, and none of it was really true. And then you see the mind control in the deliberate creation of confusion. So first it's 2 weeks, then it's do this, then it's do that, then it's no, do the opposite, then it's do this again, then it's, oh, it has to, now you have to close everything down. So it's a complete, confusion. And when the mind becomes confused, plus there's fear, and repetition of some boogeyman, then people go into shock. Okay. It's a vegetative state. And you can see it in people's face when they're in shock. It's like their eyes get really big. And then everything goes into the subconscious. And this is mind control 101. And then because of all the confusion and the stress and the mixed messages, the brain just kind of goes, blah. And then it accepts everything that the person is told. And it's easy to just obey under the perception that this will make you safe, right? So it was a very well executed psyop. And I was actually enraged because it triggered my sense of helplessness. Like when I was a child and I was held captive and, sex trafficked and put through these horrific abuses and rituals, I couldn't do anything. I was helpless. And so I felt this sense of the helplessness of the collective in the face of this. And then what I noticed also is like, oh, people are afraid of the one world government. And I thought, well, we've already been in one, because look at the response in every nation on the planet was identical, which tells you it's a top down, they're told, do this, do this. So I felt this sense of rage and helplessness that, oh no, they're doing this to all of us on Earth. And at first, I tried to fight it. I wouldn't wear I call it a face diaper. I wouldn't wear it. It's a symbolic of silencing your voice. It's symbolic of slavery. If you ever saw the Handmaid's Tale on that Hulu, that those women were supposed to wear. It's a very universally dark symbol. And the nonsensicalness and everything. So I refused to wear that, and I would get thrown out of stores. And I had actually looked up the law and typed it up on a sheet of paper and said, you're violating the law by forcing me to do this or not letting me in. And I realized very quickly when the police was escorting me out instead of dealing with the breakage of the law of the store, whatever that was getting rid of me. I thought, oh, wow, no, this is like so complete, And so it was a little hard at first, but of course, it doesn't help to be triggered and in anger because that lowers your frequency. And so I just found ways that's when I began to talk about it because I already had my podcast. And so I turned my energy into, well, let me expose this. And every person I would meet, I would try and explain it to them. Of course, as you probably know, sometimes you don't get a good reaction from that. But that's what I decided to put my energy towards. And because of those efforts, I was telling you earlier before we started, I was thrown off YouTube a few years ago for,
Mhm.
misinformation, which in Orwellian speak of today means truth.
Yeah, yeah, it was just crazy. Like it was just such a crazy time, and now it seems to like all forgotten. Like, and why do you think like this is always very intriguing to me? Why do you think some people see through it, and some people, like the police who escorted you, for example? I've had a few, when I didn't want to wear a mask, a few of the same things, and it's so hard to go against it, right? Because each time you have to. So why do some people like completely fall for it? And why do some people see through it? And it also woke a lot of people up, right? I actually made a lot of new
Yes.
friends, meet a lot of new people. So why do you think that is?
It's a different level of consciousness. It's whether how immune or not you are to mind control. So bottom line is everything in this material reality, including ourselves, is energy. It's frequency. If you look at cymetics and they pulse like a music or a sound to some sand or something, it forms shapes and patterns. So all of reality is based on frequency. So the level of consciousness determines whether because that level of consciousness, the ones who believe that are at a lower level of consciousness. And see, there is a lot of programming has been done, for example, to me as a child, and then I broke it or some of it didn't work. But this programming is done on society. And one of the big programs, and we're born into this culture with this program, is this idea in belief in authority, okay? Which really, and Mark Passio says this, if you believe in authority, you believe in slavery. And this is correct. Because it makes no sense. If you really start to think about it, it's like, wait a minute, what? Who decided that they run the show, that they own all the land or the water or the food systems or whatever? And why does one set of human beings get to tell another set of human beings how they should think, what they can say, what they can do? So it's this belief in authority. So with the police, they are basically order followers. They're obeying the people above them who are telling them what to do to their fellow human, and the people above them, so the police, the militaries, the intelligence agencies, the judiciary, these people report and answer to the cult people. They work for them, and their job is to keep us under control. Now, that's not to say that good people don't go into these areas. Someone will join the police because they want to help their community. But eventually, you know, you get stuck in this order following obedience to authority. So to obey, and this was the famous thing with the Nazis, right? Well, I was just following orders. So your orders are to do atrocities to other humans. And there's many psychological studies out there that show this sort of, it's a form of mind control that we're raised with. How this automatically happens, if people want to go look at it, they can look at the Milgram experiment I think in 1963. And
Mhm.
essentially, the experiment was that supposedly the volunteer goes in and they're supposedly asked to help this person learn a series of tasks. And the person who's supposed to learn the task is wired up. And if the person gets the answer wrong, they're supposed to give them a mild shock. And the study was supposed to say, well, this might help a person remember or whatever. And so they had the volunteer who was the innocent person, the person all tied up with the technology who's the learner who was in on it, and then the experimenter in the white coat who was in on it. And so what they did deliberately is they had, so the person would get the answer wrong, 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 and the authority figure with the white coat would tell the volunteer, turn up the shock, turn up the shock. And even on the panel, they had danger, harm, death. The majority of people were willing to turn the dial, and the person was acting, but they were acting like they were, really suffering from the shock. Most people were willing to turn the dial to the point of death, even though they believed they were harming and killing another human being, because the authority figure told them to do it. Okay? So there's a lot of deprogramming that we have to do as a society in order to get out from under the situation we're in, because it takes two to tango, as they say, So we have to be on some level, and humanity is, unfortunately, although I think it's changing, is willing to be enslaved, is willing to be told what to do, is willing to be, led and controlled. And that has to change. And that's where healing and doing your trauma work comes in, because when you become whole and strong, you grow up also. Humanity's in childhood. They want the mommy daddy government and the mommy daddy agency to tell them what to do. Well, it takes a little more energy to make your own choices and think. So, and this is just one program that the whole world is under. So I'm just taking this one as an example, but this is part of, and it's very cleverly done. And unfortunately, to go back to the health thing that you mentioned, the health crisis, I know, but I was actually still kind of shocked at how many people complied. And it's the compliance and the consent. And many, many people furthered the agenda on their own, which is what the cult hopes. They get their fellow humans to turn on their other fellow humans and force them into this solution that they came up with that was safe and effective, right? So I was a little bit disappointed to see how many people, because see, this is the way it changes. If most people had not complied, it couldn't have gone forward. So here's the main point I want to make about that. The Satanists, they will want to do what they want to do. But the only way they get it done is when we do it for them, when we comply, okay? So if the police refuse to do things that are against other humans, what are they going to do? If all the pilots in the world say, I'm not going to fly those planes that spray my fellow humans and trees and animals with toxic stuff, do you think that Bill Gates is going to go fly the plane and do it himself? No. Okay. So if the teachers do not agree to teach basically pornography in kindergarten nowadays in the school system, if they all walked away, they need us to execute their agenda. And this is where the solution lies.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally resonate with what you're saying. It's maybe a strong word, but it's part of the disease that humanity has, is that compliance, that following, that not daring to question the authority, as you so very well explained. And also, what I feel is also divide and rule. It's so ingrained, like you touched on it in the beginning, like like the Black Lives Matter thing. And I feel like, and that's also something I wanted to ask you, because obviously you're living in America, you're very aware of the current political climate there. Like, I feel like with the figure of Trump, it's like, and I do want to ask you a question about that. It also divided the truth community, because there's a lot of people that are pro freedom, that that are pro truth, that were even against what happened in the health crisis, are pro Trump. And I don't want to play into the division. If you like Trump, I mean, I love you. If you're a freedom fighter, I love you. But I am reserved, because I see some people throwing their skepticism out of the window because because he's he says, he said in one of the videos he's fighting the deep state, and I have skepticism around that. So because and I see again like division appearing, like when you say something about Trump, people get really triggered. So what is your take on that? And do you think it's possible that you can become president without being in any form compromised?
No, no. So the global cult, again, they're very, very clever. They are very, very, they design things really well. So they always have the villain and the hero. And this is the case here. So you can see presidents don't even have any power to do anything. They are actors and they are puppets, and they are doing what they are told from higher up in the hierarchy. You could consider it a movie. So in the United States, we had Blue Donkey Productions starring Joe Biden, and then now we have Red Elephant Productions starring Trump. They're both working for the same masters above, but this illusion of, this guy is going to come on right in. It's also a program, just like the belief in authority is a program. There's a savior program. We want to believe that somebody out here is going to come and save us. Okay, this is so ingrained in our minds, and it keeps working, But no, this person is as compromised as any other person before him, and would not be in this role. Okay, and I'm going to say something maybe a little bit X-rated, but here it is. You do not get to be at that level of power if you have not participated in a ritual raping and most of the time also sacrificing a child.
Wow, that's yeah, that's something that for a lot of people that would be hard to take. It would be that's the thing. We have these belief systems in our head, and I'm open to any information. And when we hear something about one person we don't like, we tend to believe that more.
Yes.
And then we if we hear the same thing about a person we do like, we cannot believe it more. So I think it comes down to the to be able to question your own beliefs. That's really important in these times, to get out of this divide and rule mess. Because
Yes.
if you don't, if you then you're like emotionally attached again to your savior or whatever it is, your own beliefs and convictions. And I think we need to, what's wrong that you were like, what's so bad? Okay, you were wrong, just admit it and move on, right? Or you believe,
Yeah.
not saying that you were wrong, but you believed in something that maybe was an illusion. And we've had to let go of a lot of illusions when we woke up. I met so many people who broke free of the illusion of the mainstream, during the health crisis. So it's liberating, actually. And yeah, it's I don't like what I see is with the divide and rule. That's why I say, if you're a Trump fan, I'm not going to judge you for believing in Trump, but at the same time, we do have to question these things. We do have to question the status quo and question this divide and rule that I see going on. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's yeah.
it's a psyop. See, so it captured people who were already awake. So, like for example, Q was a psyop. It was an inside job. And I've had people argue with me, and they said, no, because they're revealing all these true things, including like child trafficking and this and this. And I said, yeah, but they're revealing it because they know there's a segment of the population that's already awake to these things. So they're speaking to them. And the way it's a psyop is trust the plan, do nothing. Somebody will come and fix it for you. So all these really good people who are awake are going to park themselves in a corner and do nothing. And this supports the evil agenda. It flourishes when good people do nothing. I think it's actually some famous saying. I don't remember who said it. So it's the same thing with the Trump thing. There were these great patriots who saw through a lot of the communist, the blue donkey guy was more communistic, and they saw through a lot of that stuff. And they were right, and they were awake. So the cult is very clever. So let's harness this group and not let them get out of control and actually affect change. So we'll guide them into thinking that this new person who wrote in, and they like to create, it's a movie. So it's the classic movie, The Underdog, like Rocky. Oh, the underdog, and makes it to the big leagues. And that guy is no underdog. He's part of a bloodline, elite family line, just like everybody else. So, but this is how they capture those good people who otherwise might have been a problem for the cult. And now they are going to think that this hero, this savior, is going to do the right thing. But this person is just another actor with another backdrop, guiding the population, into the same totalitarian, dystopian, transhuman agenda. One way or another, they want to guide the population there. So, no, I don't, for example, I don't vote, because to me, to vote is my consent in a system that is satanic and that is designed to oppress and control me. So by not voting, I'm saying I don't participate and agree with this system at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, very interesting. And that's actually the next question I wanted to talk to you. And then you just mentioned it, is transhumanism. Because that's like, there's like this link between Satanism and transhumanism, where they
Yeah.
basically want to like capture the soul in this, um, technological matrix, basically. And then you have like, that's also like Elon Musk suddenly appearing on the scene, and then these AI guys in the administration, in the current administration, and I see it more and more. These 6G being approved now in the States, being rolled out, amongst other things. There's probably a few I can't think of now. How do you see transhumanism linked with Satanism? Like what is the because that's like something new in the last years. I mean, I'm into conspiracy for like 20 years. I woke up like in 2004, and then there was no transhumanism. Then there was like no AI. So part of that has been coming on really strong in the last like, I would say, decade, and especially the last 5 years, 4 years. What is the link there? How do you see that?
So think of what's natural, what's of source, of God, whatever you want to call that. Okay. It's organic. It's life. Okay. So what's the inverted aspect of that? Well, it's death, but it's also artificialness. Okay. So if it, for example, in the story, and there is some truth to it. I mean, these entities do exist, at least from things I've seen. So let's just take Lucifer. So he fell, he left that, and he went, and he wanted to be God, right? So, but because you separate yourself from that life force, you have to create your own artificial reality or system that you can control, right? So it's kind of like the Rockefeller medical system. They took nature, which has all the medicine you need, and they created artificial pharmas from petroleum to be the new health system, to be supposedly what cures you, which it doesn't. Of course, it actually makes you worse. But it's like that. It's like taking something natural. No, we don't want this. We're going to make our own, and this is going to be. So I see it on some level as life, anti-life, light, dark, good, evil. So that way of being transhuman, it's on one level, it's kind of controlling or being the god of the human being. They want us brain chipped, and they always sell it as a good thing, like, oh, people who can't move their arm, and then there's a robotic arm, and they get more quality of life, and I mean, that's good. But it's all about changing the real essence of the human being from being powered by love and life force and connection to the divine parts of ourselves, to being powered and run by something artificial. Okay. So that's one aspect of it. Of course, the other aspect is always control. The soul is a problem for them. If we wake up and heal ourselves and connect with our soul, we have infinite power, infinite light. Love is something they don't want us to have. Happiness, these are frequencies that they cannot control. So it's also about control, because if a human is, if you're even now that, there's still the technology they have can really control your thinking, can pulse negative emotions and negative thoughts into people. So it's a lot about creating a futuristic hybrid human machine race of people that will be the perfect slaves and give no trouble, because the people that have always given trouble throughout history are the people that are high consciousness. They come in with their light more turned on. They're not inclined to obey authority. They are creative. They use that life force to create something good for humanity. And you and I know those people are always killed or their creations are taken. I mean, this is the whole reason a patent system exists, is to take someone's creation and then, how many times in history has someone invented something good and then it just disappears, or the person is paid out and then it's never used. So I'm digressing a little, but to answer your question, yeah, it is satanic. And see, in 2004, you didn't see it yet, and this is correct, because these people play the long game, okay? So it's much easier to get the human population to enslave themselves, to destroy themselves, than to throw force out there and do it. They're few, we're many. So this has been, social engineering has been going on for hundreds of years. So it's a drip, 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 slow movement towards the desired agenda, little by little. It's also, if people want to go research, it's the Overton window, okay? So something that's unacceptable, it's slowly moved to the point that maybe at some point it becomes normal, okay? Like, for example, the satanic twisting on sexuality, okay? Which at one point was a physical act, but also an emotional and a spiritual connection to another human being, and had sacredness and had power in it. And at some point a few decades ago, the way that people exhibit that today would have been completely unacceptable, but they've socially engineered it through music, through TV, through to get people to accept the system today, the more perverse version of sexuality, as acceptable and normal. But if you even go back to the 50s or 40s, that would never have been accepted. But they have deliberately moved the needle to the point that it's accepted today. So they play the long game. So they always had the idea to make a, sort of technological, transhuman type of society, but they're going to do it slowly, little by little by little by little. I mean, I remember a time, when I was a teenager, there were no computers. I mean, there probably were, but not accessible to the average person. I remember when the first cell phones came out, they were like this big, and they looked like big bricks. And then you fast forward to today, and no one can live without this little device. And that has been, so all of these things that you might think are unrelated are deliberate pieces of bringing an agenda forward to the place that they want it. So the cell phone it has been a step towards a transhuman existence, because now it's almost, even though you're holding it in your hand, I mean, you can really say today it's almost like a part of every human being. Like, they cannot live without it. And I mean, it's even to the point addictive, like oh my God, my phone. So already just the cell phone has been a major move to a transhuman existence.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I've saw, like, from, I, before RFK joined the Trump administration, I mean, I went to, for example, to protests in Brussels where he spoke, and he spoke about freedom and all these things. And now I see him in the Trump administration, and now he just came recently out with, like, we're gonna make make American health better by, introducing wearables that track your data, like track your health data. And that, like, makes alarm bells go off in my head, of course, because I'm thinking about Klaus Schwab's, quote unquote prediction. We're going to go from usables to wearables to implantables, and I'm like, my light switches on my head. Is that like the next step? So it's crazy how things are how it's, gradually moving and like introduced as being good for you, while, we should ask the hard questions about it. So maybe we can move a little bit more into the healing part of it. And I wanted to ask you this question, because you've gone through such traumatic experiences in your life, and to lead into the healing is, and maybe some people, I don't want to come across as like, maybe some people will be offended if I ask this, but it's really not my intention to offend. But do you think on a soul level there is any way that you might have like, it's hard, it's a delicate question, right, to have chosen this, or like, is there any way that this was like part of your soul mission, to give it like this bigger overview? Because I believe, because if it's not, then people can still believe in victimhood, right? Because it kind of creates, oh, I was
Yeah.
just thrown into it. So what do you feel for yourself, and how do what is your train of thought on this?
Yeah. No, I think that's a really important question. I mean, just in a general sense, you can compare it to somebody who, say, volunteers to go and be a warrior or a soldier is doing so out of a desire to help, but that doesn't mean that they're saying, please torture me, right? But in general, and specifically for me, I do have memory of pre-incarnation into this life. And I haven't talked about it that much in the past, but I think now maybe there's more of an opening to understand this. So I'm willing to talk about it now. I was in a meeting, a sort of galactic meeting with other, beings from the universe, the multiverse, I don't know. And from what I remember, it's a little bit fuzzy, but Earth was very significant. And what happened on Earth and the capturing of Earth by dark forces was rippling through the universe and affecting other parts, other planets or, systems. And so there was a great concern with, okay, something, it's not looking good there. Now, when you're a being from a higher consciousness reality, again, it's all about frequency and consciousness. You will live in a reality where there is no violence, there is no hunger, there is no rape, there is, no disease. So, so basically, when you're at that higher level of consciousness and you look at a group of people living on a lower level of frequency consciousness planet, you cannot interfere, because what you also said, it creates victimhood. If it's that triangle, savior, perpetrator, victim. So if a group of people is a victim and you save them, they never get to grow, they never get to develop. So there's no, there's at least the people that obey the rules of the light. The dark doesn't obey rules, but you don't interfere. So how are you going to help? I believe, and I know this from that memory, I volunteered to come, but so did a lot of others. As a group, we volunteered to come, and the only way to help is to actually incarnate as a human with all the limitations of a human, with the memory wipe that you have to have, because again, when you live in other dimensional realities, you remember all of who you are, but not here. You have memory. So it's a risk, because you come into a very dense, very low frequency environment. You have a memory wipe. And then for me, I chose it, yes, because one of the things I wanted to do is end this torture and brutalization and harvesting of children. So how am I going to be the most effective? Well, to incarnate in exactly that situation. And what's one of the darkest places on earth? The Vatican. The Vatican. Okay. So I incarnated in life where I would be go into satanic rituals and be sex trafficked and everything within that system. It happens all over the planet, but I chose that place. So again, it's sort of like, I'm going to come, I'm going to be in it so that then I can survive it, I can heal from it, and then I can expose it as an insider. I can say, well, I know because it happened to me. Okay. Now, when you're in this other sort of reality, that seems really doable and really like, okay, I'm going to do this. You know, it takes courage. You have to be a warrior to want to do that. And then when you're in the life, you know, like when I was in my life, many times I thought, what the hell have I done? Like, this is horrible. I don't want this. I want to die. So trust me, many, many times as a child, I wanted to just die. I just could not. I was like, no, this is too much. And sometimes I did die. And then I would be given the choice to come back into my body or not. But then when you're not here and you see the bigger picture, I would choose to come back, right? So it is complicated. There's a lot of, somebody could hear me say this and say, no, I didn't choose to be abused. And it's like, no, you didn't choose to be abused, but you chose to go to a planet in trouble and a human race, which is such a beautiful, humans are just so beautiful, filled with light and love. And you chose to go try to make a difference. You chose basically to go into a spiritual war between the dark and the light, to be a light, to try and help. That's not the same as asking to be abused. It's a side effect, it's a risk of the operation. Like when these special elite Marines go, I mean, yeah, they might get tortured, but they're not going and saying, oh, I want to be tortured. So there's a fine line there. But that's kind of the way that I look at it. And look, it doesn't mean, I suffered so much, physically, mentally, I have been electrocuted and, put in extremes like in big industrial freezers. I have been buried with dead bodies as punishment. I have been kept isolated in cages without food and water. I have been tortured, hung upside down over a fire, of course, raped, beaten, everything you can imagine. And it was horrible. I don't wish that on my worst enemy. And it was so painful and it was so terrifying. And then really the worst for me was to see animals and other people be brutalized in front of me to get me to comply with certain things, So honestly, and I've said to like, source or God, like, okay, the next life, I need a spa existence. Like I just, oh my God, this has been brutal. Okay. But that was my mission. So, and it took a lot to recover and heal from that. And it's still an ongoing process. But I believe that even my own healing and all the efforts that I've put into it and still do, this act of me transforming this darkness into a more powerful, actually, light version of myself is itself, the act of doing it, because we're all energy, creates out there the possibility for everyone to do it. It helps lighten up the field. That thing, I think you've probably seen it somewhere, and I don't remember the exact number, but it says something like one conscious person can negate, I don't know, several thousands of unconscious people, right? So one person who's willing to do their healing can, it's almost like it makes it more available for other people, and it transforms reality. Each one of us, like if you think of the planet as being mostly dark, and then every person who does their healing work is like a light bulb that turns on. At some point that darkness is gone when all the lights come on. So yeah, so that would be my answer to your question.
Yeah, that's a great nuanced answer. I think it's really good that you make that nuance. And as you are so for your healing, because we like we said in the beginning, we all have to do healing. everybody. I mean, I'm also healing. Everybody has to do it. And I've been working on myself for the last spiritually. Really, first I read the books, but then I started meditating. Working on myself, also healing. And I know how beautiful it can be, but the healing journey can also be really, really tough. Sometimes there is, emotions coming up. Sometimes you get triggered. So it's really, sometimes it's grinding work in a way. It's also it's also very liberating and beautiful in the end. But maybe it's a broad question. I know, but how did you heal? Because I know what quote unquote like people with quote unquote normal experiences on this planet have to do for healing, which is a lot of healing work. Like with the things you went through, like how did you heal? Actually, I know it's a broad question, but what what and maybe second part of the question is, what is the most powerful thing that you healed with? I know it's a broad question, but
Yeah. Well, I'll try and do it justice. Just to get it out of the way, you want to heal the whole of yourself, which includes your physical body, your mind, your emotions, and your spirit, right? So obviously, you want to heal your body. You want to eat the most nutritious food. You want to be hydrated. You want to exercise your body. You want to meditate so that you can, still the mind. So you want to do all those things because that's part of it. And I have done that. One very powerful thing for me was actually being in therapy. And what it was is that, growing up as a child and, on top of all that abuse, my mother had been abused herself. So she was very sometimes depressed, sometimes violent, and just, just no attachment bond. And they deliberately break that attachment bond anyway. So I had not developed normally as a baby. You're supposed to have an attachment with a caregiver, and that sets like the foundation of your being. And, different psychologists call it like basic trust. You learn that. Well, I didn't have anything of that, right? So this relationship that I had, and I did it for 10 years, something really healed in me because here was a benign, benevolent person who was in this role. I mean, as adults, as children, you're supposed to get that unconditional love and attention from your mother or your mother figure. And as adults, a lot of people didn't get it, so they go after it from other adults, but that never works. But with a therapist, it's a special relationship. They're there for you. So I was able to develop trust, develop a sense of attachment. I always felt like I was just floating in an abyss, falling. Like I wanted connection with other people, once I got out, and I had a lot of friends or whatever, but there was always this panic inside me that either I would lose it or, and this was of course just the memory of what happened to me, I still had this subconscious belief that if they were friends with me or connected with me, something bad would happen to them. They would be killed, they would be disappeared or something. So to be in relationship with other people was so tormenting for me. So I both really needed it and then had a terrible panic about it. And it was this impossible dilemma. So through this attachment and consistency from my therapist and always, that built something in me that I can't, I can't even say it, I guess a foundation in me that really made life so much easier after that. So one powerful thing for me was the therapeutic relationship. That's besides the fact that I had a lot of repressed memories that came up and kind of put things to the puzzle pieces together through that therapy as well. Okay. Another thing is when I got out and when I came to the United States, I went to school. I did an undergraduate, a master's, and a doctorate, and I studied psychology and, of course, trauma. And I worked in different places, like I worked in prisons and jails and inner city community mental health centers and with abused children and with I did work with a batterers program with men's groups. So a lot of the work that I did was in really kind of traumatic situations. And believe it or not, just being able to have agency and help people and do something and change the trauma for someone else was healing it inside of me at the same time. Okay. So that was another aspect of it. Becoming a mother. I became a mother at some point, and the incredible love and bond with my child, I learned how to love. I just, it's this innocent being that came out of my own body. So I was able to have no barriers, no fear. And to raise a child safely with no trauma, with my love, with my protection, it was like another chance at a childhood. So it gave me a sense of what a normal childhood would be and could be. And I sort of healed from that, from the love and from being able to bring this beautiful being into the world and raise her in a way that she didn't go through anything that I went through. That was a huge thing for me. I did things for the physical body, like during my therapy, I took up boxing because the rage started to come out. You cannot go through these experiences and not have rage inside your body. And I never things were done to me and I couldn't fight back as a child. So my body had to fight. So I took up boxing and I loved it. And every time I was punching, and then I went to kickboxing and kicking, my body got to fight and do that action that it could not do when I was a helpless child. There was something profoundly healing about my body getting to fight and feel powerful. So I would say that was another aspect of it. And then a big part of it was deprogramming and reprogramming myself in my mind. So one thing, the way I kind of see the psyche is, and this is actually something they do deliberately with trauma-based mind control, the trauma fragments you. So the cult people know this, so they will traumatize a child so the child shatters, and then there's an altar, you're in shock, there's an altar, and this is how they program people to do, like, for example, to be a spy and then go and do something and then not remember it later. So they deliberately create different parts, fractured parts inside the psyche. But this is what happens with all trauma. To cope, you have to dissociate what happened to you and put it away to keep surviving and keep going. So part of the healing was also recovering all these things that I had buried deep down, and it includes the emotions and the child of a certain age who gets stuck in this trauma. So it was bringing back all those parts and healing all those parts, and then they kind of become part of you. And one of the ways that I realized the best way to find your trauma is to observe what triggers you. So, for example, I would see a man with a small child at the park or in a cafe, and instead of assuming like, oh, this is a loving dad with his child, I would immediately think this child was kidnapped, this is a perpetrator. Like, it would trigger me. So I began to, so you follow your trigger, or driving and being stuck behind on the freeway. There's the left, in America anyway, in the left lane, you're supposed to go pass. And then, so somebody driving slow in front of me and I cannot pass. I would go in such a rage over that like I was in a huge sweating and angry and cursing the person and honking at them and being kind of an ass, And then I had to ask myself, okay, wait a minute, why? Why are you so triggered by this? I mean, yes, it's kind of annoying, but why are you so triggered? And then I was able to find, oh, because it's thwarting me. It's like when I was tied up or put in a cage, it's blocking me from, you know, moving forward, from doing what I want to do. It was like a control. So once I realized why that particular life thing triggered so much in me, then I would go back and go, oh, and find the places, the memories where those things happen and heal that. And today that doesn't bother me anymore. Yes, I might be a little annoyed, but I don't go into that, life or death kind of situation. So using triggers, knowing that when you are triggered, it's activating something that's already inside you, a trauma that's already inside you. It's not about the person in front of you. They're not doing anything to you. It's like you already have it, like a bruise, and they accidentally touched it, and then you react. So it was a lot of learning for me. You can become very reactive when you have a lot of trauma. And I was. So it was learning how to identify, okay, this has made me reactive. Okay, now I'm going to stop, because it's not the person in front of me's fault. They didn't do anything to me. They only activated me. So going and dealing with that activation, dealing with why, who in me is reacting, and then working on that. So that was a huge one. And that's something that I really teach people, because we cannot be victims. It takes personal responsibility to change yourself. You have to understand that everything you have to go inside and deal with it. This person may behave like an ass, sure, but it's my reaction and my response that I can control and that I need to deal with, right? And then it was the deprogramming and reprogramming. And I still do that today. It's like I say to myself, okay, I'm finding myself thinking something, feeling kind of, I don't know, bad. And then I wake up to it and I go, wait, what am I doing? And then I'm like, okay, that's programmed me. I want to move over to the timeline of real me, not programmed me. So I have to analyze, why did I think that? Why am I feeling, like a fear of, I don't know, something, a big one is the fear that if everything is going kind of okay, something bad's about to happen. Well, because that was my reality as a child, always. And they make that the case, right? So being aware of my own thinking and how I am interpreting a situation. So, for example, if somebody would make a plan with me and then cancel, my interpretation was, I don't matter, they hate me, they were toying with me, they never really intended to be, they're not really my friend. And what? Why am I thinking that? Maybe this person canceled because their dog is sick, or their mom died, or they something. But I would assume that it would be something about me, and then I would have a whole story in my head that later I would find out and feel foolish because, oh, whoops, that wasn't true. So a really, like, I don't know if you ever read the Carlos Castaneda books, but he says to Don Juan, says, you have to be ruthless and relentless. I have become ruthless about my own, watching my own programming, watching my own thinking, always saying, wait a minute, is that a correct way of thinking? Can I change this perspective to something else, to something that is empowering? So that's kind of, I know, a long answer, but those are some of the components that I have done in my healing.
Yeah, it's a great answer, and I think it's very important for all of us, because these principles of healing, they apply to all of us. No matter what you have gone through, what you've experienced, if it's on the lighter end of the scale or the more extreme end of the scale. What I wanted to ask you is, did you have, like, it's a thing that they said doesn't exist anymore according to the official mainstream psychology, or you're gonna know a lot more about that than me, is this dissociative disidentity disorder, like multiple disidentity disorder. You spoke about parts. Is that something you had, or is it more like parts? Because I've from other survivors speaking, there's like a kind of a spectrum where some people really have DID and then some people have
Yeah.
parts. I don't know how you experienced that.
Yeah. I think it's sort of a continuum, so you can call it dissociation. And on the low end, it could be, you're in the classroom and the professor is boring and droning on, and then you realize, oops, I didn't hear the last half hour of the lecture, right? Or you're driving somewhere and you don't even know how you got there, and then suddenly you're there. So that's one very sort of normal, I guess, way of dissociation. And then at this extreme is what they call DID, dissociative identity disorder, and what they used to call multiple personality disorder. So all of us can be somewhere on this continuum. And some people, so yes, in some cases, and again, the cult deliberately creates multiple personalities, and they're personalities that then have their parts or alters that don't have any knowledge of a different alter, because maybe this alter is programmed to be an assassin, and then the front alter would live a normal life and have no idea that they have this training. But then with certain trigger words or things, this would be activated, and the person goes into, say, the assassin part, and then does something that the cult wants them to do. So this has been deliberately done. Mengele was very helpful in this effort, how to, create basically a dissociated, mind-controlled slave. So they did this deliberately and created, and even there's systems inside of people where there's an altar, and then that altar has sub-altars. I mean, it's very, very complicated, and deliberately, yes, done. And it kind of depends on the training that we would have had in the cult. And it kind of depends on your resilience and how easily or not easily fragmented you will become. So there's a range of it. And so some people may have had very distinct alters, and then they slowly, kind of become aware of that. And then other people have more what I would just call parts. So for me, I had more parts and not really completely separate personalities. So as an example, I had a part that was kind of like a male 20-year-old defiant, who rode around like this, and so very angry, very ready to fight. And this part, it's very complicated. This part was protecting more vulnerable, childlike, open-hearted parts, because those parts cannot be allowed to interact with the world because it's dangerous, right? So you develop these protector parts, and then you have more innocent parts, and and then I had a part that was very, very dark and defeated, and held most of the darkest part of the trauma, and just was suicidal all the time. And I would go in and out of those different parts until I realized that what I was doing, and was able to kind of bring them all home. And, awareness is everything. So I think we all have parts. Think about it like somebody invites you to go to a party, and you have a part that says, oh yeah, I want to do that. And then as soon as you say yes, you have another part that goes, oh, I don't want to do that. I like just staying home. Like everyone has different parts. So my awareness of my parts helped me then kind of helped it sort of come together. And I think awareness, self-observation is a huge tool if you want to be a free human being and not be manipulated by outside forces, whether it's the cult and their mind control, or whether it's your husband or wife, or whether it's any outside situation that triggers you. Now you're not actually in control. Now they're controlling you, right? So self-awareness, consciousness is really, really important. And I think that's something we should all try and do all the time. Self-observe, ask yourself, is this thought true? Is this thought even mine? Am I programmed to think this by my childhood or by society? Like, what could be another way that I could see this situation? Just constantly questioning ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's I think that's one of the hardest parts of healing too, is to be able, especially in situations where you're triggered or you're like in a certain part, to be able to bring consciousness into that aspect, to bring consciousness, into your body or into your being, and that's how you grow. That's how you like break the chains of trauma, basically, right? But it's not an easy thing, because we all know when you're emotional and when you're in a certain part, how hard it is to like look at yourself. It's a lot easier to be objective about other people than to be objective about ourselves, right? So that's the not easy part of healing. Um, Maybe I want to talk a little bit about unconditional love, because in my own, or self love, what people have different names for it. And what I found, I've learned this from a spiritual teacher. He's passed away now. His name was Michael Rhodes. I really liked him. I went to his intensives, and as I was growing in my own spirituality, he really was talking about love, and I started to applying that self love in my own life. And that's one of the things that really helped me most, is because we all, like you said, we all, and a lot of people have this negative voice inside themselves, like beating them down, like calling them names inside their own head. A lot of people do that, or out loud, like saying to themselves they're stupid. And it's really also a deeply ingrained pattern in humanity, that I found. Self-love is really healing for that. Did you did you apply probably self-love? How was that in your own healing practice? How did you apply that?
Yeah, I would say that's been the hardest part and the most recent part that I've been doing. And it is. And so ideally, from our parents, we should experience unconditional love. Everything that you experience, particularly in the first 7 years of life, becomes your foundation. The Jesuits know this. So they say, give me a child until the age of 7 and I will give you the man, right? So to have this unconditional love from a parent sets you up then to love yourself and love others. But in this planet, in this reality of trauma that we live in, and poison and all of it, not that many people get that unconditional love. So people have a lot of issues, but that is something. And so if you didn't receive it, like for me, I didn't know how to love myself because I never experienced the love towards me, right? So I had to learn that. That's something I learned through the therapy, through that had an element of unconditional love to it. Sometimes, I think one of the reasons they're trying to take away pets is because with a dog or a cat or a horse or whatever, you have animals give you absolutely unconditional love, no questions asked. They don't care what you look like or how much money you have or anything. And so that is a huge factor. And I am practicing that unconditional love towards myself more and more. It was always much easier for me to love others, but so I've always had, for example, pets, and I've learned a lot from that. And it is again about frequency. So there's you can Google it online. If you put in David Hawkins' map of consciousness, there's it's like a hierarchy of consciousness, and there's survival frequencies, fear and hate and anger. And then, you go to courage and other things. And then at the top is love and peace, right? So the reason that the cult has a world that keeps us in survival frequencies is precisely because that's the reality they exist in, okay? They don't want us to learn to unconditionally love ourselves or others, because once you go to that frequency, it creates, actually, if most of us or a certain number of us get there, the entire reality will shift and they won't exist. They cannot, it's like if you take a fish out of the water, they cannot exist in air. These people cannot exist in that frequency. So if you yourself create that unconditional love frequency within yourself, you become immune to the mind control and to it, and you interpret things out there, as much as they might be maybe a little bit unsavory, in a way that doesn't cause trauma. So you're free, right? And it collectively, that's what I see happening. I see that we're going towards that, and we're going to live. I don't know how long it's going to take, and right now it's very, very turbulent. But my intuition says that they have reset humanity before. This is not the first round of us. There have been more advanced versions, which is why, the pyramids and all these things, people can explain how they exist. But I have a feeling that this time it's over. They're not going to successfully reset us. And if we can get to love is their end. So if we can love ourselves and love others, the reality around us will change to reflect that frequency, and we will be living in a world that we cannot even imagine right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally resonate with that because, in a way, our reality is like a reflection of the global human consciousness, right? If we still hold on to, at a
Yep.
global level, onto victim consciousness, we're going to manifest that in the form of these elites who, in their own way, they don't want to help us, but they will, push it to such extremes, like during the health crisis, that it's like right in our face that like the universe is asking, do you see it now, and will you wake up? It's everything is interconnected on such a deep level that I think even those dark forces, although we of course do not condone what they do. In a way, they are a force that's, and I want to tread carefully here. It's not their goal to help us, but just by virtue of them trying out for control, it's like this dynamic where they're waking us up actually by pushing the boundaries so far that humanity is waking up. So there's this like kind of link dynamic going on, and maybe that's part of the. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loudly here. Maybe that's part of the divine design, if I dare say, or what's your take on that? Like, it's a very touchy subject, right? It's like a little bit of the same thing. The question is, why do you incarnate? Um, do what do you think is the dark is the dark has God allowed this, or is it maybe free will? So it's in my perspective on this is that God, the divine doesn't allow this, obviously, but they were given free will, so it's their responsibility. I don't know what you think about this.
Yeah, I do think it's a free will choice. I mean, when you're in a reality like this, it sure doesn't feel like it, and in many ways, the dark doesn't play by the rules. So they have done things that, they have taken it way, way further. But yes, in doing so, because everything does go back to that divine nature. So everything they've done, when they did 9/11, it woke a lot of people up. When they did the health thing, it woke a lot of people up. Everything they're doing is waking people up. The food control of the decimation of the global food supply chain is actually pushing people to grow their own food. And I just saw a little video the other day of some wonderful man in South LA who bought a house and made his front yard into a beautiful garden. And then people are buying his produce, and he's creating what in an area that's a food desert, some really healthy, nutritious food, right? So everything that the dark are doing, it's actually creating, ironically, an opposite. So what the health scare has created an awakening in people, and they're no longer consuming from that healthcare system the way that they used to. They're no longer taking their children in to be, toxified by these products that they're told their children need and have to be put in their bodies, right? People are waking up. So it's creating the opposite. There's a return to natural healthcare because of that system and the abuses that it perpetrated. The food thing, people are going to more, okay, I mean, a few generations ago, everyone grew their own produce and whatnot, right? Everything that they're doing, I agree, it's actually backfiring and creating, humans are very creative. It's creating in people this And that's the way out of this. You cannot change their system because it's actually every agency they have is created to do harm and to kill and to control, period. So you cannot decide, well, I'm going to change this system and it's going to become more benign. No, go outside of it and create something completely different that's organic and that's helpful. And that's what people are doing. So I agree. You know, what if we take this dance with the dark that we've all been in and we use it to go higher? So we've been like human beings have been sort of childlike and innocent and easily misled and controlled. But what if through this experience we gain wisdom and then we maintain that loving vulnerability and innocence, but coupled with wisdom, and we go forward and we live in an even higher. What if we use this jujitsu it and actually come up higher for that experience? Yes, that's definitely available to us. And, you know, if you're in a dark room, what is darkness? It's the absence of light, right? So this darkness is the absence of light. So is it that God allows it, or is it just choices? Again, are we victims, or have we, been manipulated maybe into choosing these things? But regardless, you have to wake up and decide at some point, actually, I choose something else. And because we are powerful creators, if we choose differently, free will choice, we can free will choice ourselves instead of a hell on earth into a heaven on earth. And I know that fine line that you're talking about, because people will seize upon that and go, oh, you know, well, there is no victim. There is no victim without a perpetrator, but there's also no perpetrator without a victim. You know, and if you're a savior, somebody has to be a victim for you to save them, right? So the people that say that, you know, that Jesus is going to come and save us, I mean, no, that wouldn't help. That means that we're victims, you know, or the ETs are going to come save us, or Trump is going to save us. This is a flawed way to look at it. We are here to grow and save ourselves. And ultimately, these creatures that run this planet are less powerful than we are. We just have to get ourselves out of the healing from the trauma and understand who we actually are. And then we can it can be a different reality completely. You know, so I don't subscribe to victimhood. It's a dangerous program.
Absolutely, and it's one of the main deeply embedded programs that you know humanity has been living in, and it's so beautiful to break free from, and that's why you know the work that you're doing is so important. It's shining light on the dark subjects, because I always feel like we need to be able. It's like your own personal healing work is, you know, looking at the parts of yourself you've been suppressing, and it's the same way in global healing. We need to look at those dark. It doesn't mean we have to get lost in it, but we need to be able to look at it. It's a holistic thing, you know. We're in a reality with light and dark, and we have to be able to look at all of it, and you do that very beautifully. And I really like your ending message. It's very empowering, and the more we grow in consciousness, like you say, you talked about David Hawkins. The more we grow into that higher consciousness, the less all these, you know. Sometimes it seems silly to me, like how can we kill other beings, right? Like, well, what's happening in Palestine or something, like again that divide and rule, like how can we maintain it, how can we do it if we would have everybody would be and I know it sounds very, it may sound naive, like to say if everybody would be loving and empathic, this wouldn't be able to happen. And you know, it's dystopia, but there are realities where it is possible. There are higher dimensions where, you know, beings live in peace and live in coexistence, and I think as humanity we're growing towards that. So before we go on and take a look at your and the site and the work you do to close off, is there any closing words you want to share, or?
Well, I want to say thank you to you for this conversation, and I hope that it helps somebody or many people watching it, because, you know, that's, I think, both of our goals here. I will say to people, I think we're living in the most incredible time in human history. where we are going to exit this dark matrix. No more resets. We actually are on the way to a complete transformation. And there's so much power in the transformation itself. So I would encourage everyone to address your traumas, look inside of yourself, connect with the divine. They've wanted us disconnected from ourselves. So connect to yourself by working on your trauma. They've divided and conquered and disconnected us from each other. Go to your fellow human and make connections and help people when you can and come together for common goals. And then they've disconnected us from our divine parts and our divine self. Reconnect with that part of you too. And that love, that connection is going to change everything. And as bad as things look out there right now, it's because there's more light and it's shining on the darkness that has always been here. It's not getting worse, it's getting better. You're seeing it. And before you didn't see it, that's progress, because the more we see it, the less power it has on us. And remember, we are more powerful than them. And we're doing it. Okay, we're doing it. So as turbulent as times will be, I think the old structures do have to fall, but that is necessary for something new to take its place. And I have great optimism in where we're going. And I have great optimism in the human being, because what I see is anytime there's a disaster or a weather event that they have orchestrated and burned this area or flooded this area, people come together to help each other. No matter how much trauma there is globally, people love each other. They love their children. So the human being is a beautiful, beautiful being. And I have faith in us. And I have faith in the divine, and I have faith in the fact that this is something that has been for our growth, and we're already, on some level, we've already won this battle, so just hang in there.
Oh, that's beautiful. It's yeah, we are such powerful, we are amazing divine designs, a human being, and we are such powerful beings, and we just need to reconnect with that power inside. And the more we do that, the more our reality will transform. So this is your site, Unbroken. So you offer healing services. You offer you offer trauma healing services. Maybe you could do a little word about that, exactly about what you offer.
I do work in counseling therapy with primarily I have survivors that I work with. But anyone, who wants to heal their trauma or better themselves, you can reach out to me. My email is max@unbroken.global, and it's on there. Actually, it's not on there, but if you fill in a form, it comes to that email. I also, sometimes I just meet with people a few times because they're awakening. And to become awake is actually a little bit traumatic, when your whole reality shatters and you have to, see something that you didn't see before. So I help people with that. I have a membership option because we need to create community as much as possible. And right now it's virtual, on Zoom. But if people want to become a member, it's a little bit of money every month. And then every month we meet together on a Zoom and we connect and we strategize. Sometimes I have met some incredible people that I've interviewed. So I sometimes have them come to the Zoom. So the next one that's happening this month, Matt Roske from Cultivate Elevate is coming on. He has some great health information, and so we come together as a community, and it's very supportive. So when people become a member, it also helps me to pay for the editing of the interviews I do and the website and all this technology that I need to pay for to put out all the free content that I do. And then I have started doing classes. So there's a tab that says classes, and I have done some seminars on mind control because I want people to understand what that is and what it looks like so they can be immune to it. I have done a 5-week course on trauma and recovery. Again, people need to understand what trauma is, what it does to you. I think knowing information is power, so it's to educate people, on the brain and how it works and how we can be manipulated, and how we can, the things I've talked to you about, how we can deprogram and reprogram ourselves and all of that. So periodically I offer the course, and then I'm going to be doing other seminars on other topics as well. And so that's the part that's educational that I think is so important. Yeah, so that's pretty much me. And I also write on Substack. I like to write, so I put some different articles. Sometimes, like, one was about Satanism in the Vatican and what are psyops, and then sometimes I write about, like, how to do your inner process and your shadow work. So it's different things. And I have someone who helps me because I'm very bad with technology, but I'm on Instagram, and my videos are on Rumble, BitChute, and Brighteon. And like on Instagram, I've been doing some short little clips about the Vatican lately because, the Pope died, the other Pope was selected, and it just inspired me to reveal a little bit more. So if you want to follow me there, yeah. And generally speaking, I did a summit in December of 2023. I had some very beautiful people that came and spoke, a lot of SRA survivors, and you can actually buy that on my website for just a little bit and watch that whole summit. And I plan to do another one at some point next year, hopefully in person, and have people come. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about me. And yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, that's amazing, amazing and beautiful work that you're doing. It's really essential in these times, really this kind of activism. It's really beautiful. And oops, I removed you there for a second. I pressed the wrong button. And I've heard I've read that you were writing a book. Do you have any
Yes.
idea when it might come out? Because I'm going to definitely be buying that one.
I would say maybe in a year from now, or hopefully less. But yeah, I really want to tell my story and my journey, and the wisdom that I've learned along the way, and just put it out there, because I think when I have spoken out, I've had many people reach out to me and say, oh my God, I really, like, I went through these things too, and I didn't know, and hearing your story really helped me. So yeah, I'm gonna be doing that maybe at maximum a year from now. I'm working on that.
That's great. Okay, so to close off talking about books, I also want to just present my book, A World in Transition. I've written it. It's come out in English just recently. It was originally published in Dutch, but I updated it for the English edition. And actually, a lot of what we've talked about, what you shared, Max, it totally resonated with me, because a lot of I also talk about exactly the same things in the book. The first part is more about the conspiracy, because it's important to get into the facts, history of this global conspiracy. And then in the second part of the good book, I go more into the spiritual aspects of it. So if you're interested, it's on Amazon, and the link's in the description. So thank you, Max. Thank you so, so much. I have to say, I admire you, the strength of your spirit. You're healing, you're speaking out, the bravery you do in speaking out. I'm really honored to have you on my channel as a guest. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful to spend time with you and have this conversation.
Absolutely. So thank you, everybody. If you like this, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Thank you. Bye-bye.